This filled me with a deep sense of pride, though it also stirred a whirlwind of conflicting emotions within me. I can still vividly recall one particular evening when he returned home after sports practice. He stepped inside with damp hair, his body relaxed, and his posture slightly slouched in a way that exuded both ease and casual confidence. Dressed simply in a t-shirt and shorts, his minimalistic attire failed to mask the natural charm he carried with him. I couldn't help but notice how my heart quickened at the sight of sweat glistening on his skin, giving him an untamed, primal allure. His presence seemed to emanate an energy that captivated me, and in that moment, I found myself spellbound by the sheer vitality he exuded. His laughter, which seemed to fill the room effortlessly, had the ability to transform even the dullest of moments into something vibrant, full of joy. The radiance of his smile, stretching across his broad lips, had a way of making all my worries melt away, allowing me to bask in the beauty of the moment. His genuine ability to spread happiness with such ease was truly remarkable, and whenever his eyes sparkled with amusement, it felt as though everything in the world was exactly as it should be. These moments made me reflect on the fleeting nature of time, on how much had passed, and how, as his parent, I had witnessed him grow into this incredible young man. I began observing him more closely, whether he was studying, practicing sports, or spending time with friends. I marveled at his demeanor, his grace, and his natural respect for others. It filled me with immense pride, as every move he made, and every word he spoke seemed to embody the values I had hoped he would develop. Those simple, everyday routines now carried a deeper meaning, and I found myself feeling an ever-deepening admiration for the person he had become. The days when I could simply delight in the fact that he was my son had passed, and in their place, my feelings had grown more complex. There came a moment, however, when I could no longer keep these emotions hidden. It happened one evening, as we sat together watching a comedy. He laughed in that unique, infectious way of his, a sound so full of life that it could fill an entire room with warmth. As I watched him, I felt a sudden shift within me. My senses awakened, and I felt something stirring inside me that went beyond simple kinship. Our hands brushed together as we reached for the same snack, and that fleeting touch ignited a spark inside me that I couldn't ignore. A fire started to build, an undeniable warmth I couldn't extinguish, despite my efforts to push away the thoughts that now clouded my mind. That Christmas marked a turning point. I knew it was the moment when I would no longer hide these feelings. I decided to give him something special, not just a physical gift, but something far more significant. Something that would reveal the depth of my emotions, unspoken and hidden for so long. I couldn't help but feel that this night would be a revelation, a moment of transformation, as I gazed into his eyes and saw something more reflected in them. I felt a mix of excitement and fear, but above all, I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness, knowing that this moment would define everything to come. As Christmas drew closer, I sensed that our relationship had changed in ways I hadn't fully understood. The space between us, once filled with the warmth of familial love, had shifted into something altogether different. With every step in preparing for the party, I felt a deeper anticipation building inside me. The evening seemed to promise something more, an unforgettable journey that would be mine to claim. There was no turning back now. What lay ahead wasn't simply a matter of tradition or holiday joy. It was a discovery of emotions I had never dared to acknowledge before. Sitting quietly in my home, surrounded by the warmth of Christmas cheer, the tree lights sparkling brightly, I was struck by a strange sense of renewal. Despite the lines on my face, despite the signs of age that had slowly crept up on me, I suddenly felt young again, invigorated by something I hadn't expected. This was more than just the holiday spirit. It was a new beginning, a thrilling excitement that seemed to grow stronger with every passing day. My son Robert, at 17, was no longer just the child I had raised, but a young man whose presence affected me in ways I tried to ignore but couldn't. His youthful beauty, the confidence in his every move, his golden hair and radiant smile, they captivated me like never before. I began to notice the way he walked, how his hand would brush against mine, the brief, seemingly accidental moments that now felt charged with meaning. I sought out any excuse to be near him, whether it was going shopping or sitting together to watch a movie. Every simple connection felt electric, and my heart raced with a whirlwind of emotions I could no longer suppress. From the moment I began to see Robert not just as my son, but as a young man, everything changed. Every glance, every word, every movement seemed to carry a weight, a significance I hadn't fully appreciated before. Yet, as I stepped into uncharted territory, crossing boundaries I had never before considered, a part of me refused to retreat. Thoughts of him consumed my mind, and even though I understood the risks, I couldn't stop myself from following this intense, unfamiliar pull. As Christmas approached, these feelings only grew more powerful. I began to imagine ways to express my emotions, wondering if perhaps he felt something similar, or if it was all just my own imagination, fueled by fleeting moments of tenderness. In the days leading up to the holiday, we spent more time together than ever. Robert offered to help me with the holiday shopping, something we had never done before, and each shared moment filled me with warmth. I reveled in every excuse to immerse myself in the Christmas preparations, roasting turkey, wrapping gifts, decorating the house. Each task became more than just a chore. It became a source of pure joy, simply because I was sharing it with him. One afternoon, while we were hanging lanterns outside, Robert looked at me with a sincerity that took me by surprise. "You know, Mom," he said, "I've always loved Christmas with you. Everything feels so much warmer and happier when we're together." His words struck me deeply, filling me with pride and tenderness. I smiled as I adjusted the collar of his coat, touched by the honesty in his voice. It was more than just a compliment. It was a reflection of something real and authentic, something that made my heart swell with affection. As the holidays neared, my anticipation grew. I spent hours preparing dinner, a mix of nervousness and joy flooding me. I knew I had to be cautious, careful not to reveal my inner thoughts. But despite the restraint, there was a part of me that felt this was the right time, that the magic of Christmas was somehow the perfect backdrop for what I needed to express. I prepared not just a meal, but a moment of revelation, a chance to let my heart speak in a way it never had before. In the days that followed, my life became filled with intimate, tender moments. One morning, while having breakfast, Robert noticed the fitted sweater I had chosen, one that highlighted my figure. It was an unusual choice for me, but his compliment, "You look great, Mom," wrapped me in a warmth I hadn't felt in years. There was something deeper in his words, something that made me realize he saw me not just as his mother, but as a woman. As I watched him continue eating, I couldn't look away from the self-assured expression on his face. In that moment, I realized just how profoundly I admired him, the person he had become, his confidence, and the ease with which he navigated life. Even as I wrestled with guilt over these feelings, I couldn't deny they had become a part of who I was. I understood that preparing dinner wasn't just about the festivities. It was a prelude to something far greater. The gift I was preparing for him wasn't something that could be wrapped in paper or tied with a ribbon. No material object could convey what I was feeling. What mattered most was the moment, the right moment, when everything would be laid bare. This Christmas would mark the beginning of a new phase in our relationship, one filled with hidden emotions, unspoken truths, and a love I was finally ready to embrace. The quiet of the evening settled around me like a comforting blanket, and as I closed my eyes, Robert's image surfaced vividly in my mind. The thought of him maturing into a man stirred a complex cocktail of pride and confusion deep within me. My heart raced as a storm of questions swirled in my mind. How would he react to my feelings? The connection between us, once subtle, had grown undeniably stronger, bringing us to a crucial point. The days leading up to Christmas felt like a test of my resolve. I was faced with the impending choice to either retreat from this feeling or let it unfold. One morning, while I was preparing breakfast, Robert approached with a radiant warmth in his expression, his presence filling the room. He spoke of our past holiday traditions, recalling the moments when his father and I would bake cookies together on Christmas Eve. His words, laced with fondness, sent a wave of nostalgia through me, yet it was his genuine, confident presence that truly captured me. The ease with which he spoke, his sincerity, left me feeling exposed, like I was caught between the safety of our familiar bond and the danger of what was beginning to surface. I smiled and agreed to recreate the tradition, though a part of me felt we were venturing into unknown territory. We spent hours in the kitchen, the space transformed into a lively mess as we laughed and prepared the dough. Our casual touches, so frequent and innocent, seemed to deepen the connection between us. I found myself captivated by the gleam in his eyes, and each shared moment felt like it carried more weight than the last. It was exhilarating, yet terrifying. I knew we were moving into uncharted waters, but I couldn't stop myself from wanting to embrace it. That night, as I lay in bed, my thoughts were consumed by the inevitable changes that Christmas would bring. I knew this holiday would be more than just gifts and decorations. It would mark the moment when I would have to face my deepest feelings, a moment that could alter everything between us. When Christmas Day finally arrived, the house was alive with warmth and the laughter of family. Each gift wrapped, every ornament hung, seemed to push me closer to the decision I had spent so many sleepless nights contemplating. Robert's laughter rang through the air, a melody that completely captivated me. Yet, beneath the joy, there was an undercurrent of longing that I could no longer ignore. The day slowly wound down, and the guests began to leave, the house growing quiet, leaving only Robert and me. He stepped toward me, offering to help with the cleanup. His voice, soft and sincere, was filled with care. But as he approached, I saw him, not just as my son, but as a young man. His poise, the subtle vulnerability in his gaze, took me by surprise. The tension in the room was palpable, and without a word, I took his hand and led him to the window, where the snow drifted gently outside, blanketing everything in a serene, silent white. As we stood there, side by side, a wave of emotion washed over me. Tenderness, fear, hope. The weight of everything unspoken between us was almost too much to bear. I wanted him to understand how much he meant to me, how profoundly his presence affected me. Silence hung between us, heavy and thick, yet I knew it was the silence before the storm of truth. Gathering every ounce of courage, I turned to him, meeting his steady, expectant gaze. In that moment, the world seemed to stop. There was no turning back. The culmination of everything I had been feeling built within me, and I leaned in closer, drawn irresistibly to him. Our lips met in a kiss, soft at first, then deepening, as if it were a release of something long hidden. The world outside disappeared, leaving only the two of us, bound by a shared, undeniable connection. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a breaking of walls, a merging of two souls who had been standing at the precipice for far too long. The glow of the Christmas tree lights wrapped around us, creating a magical tenderness that felt as though it could last forever. The moment was no longer fleeting. It was a permanent mark on our hearts, an irreversible step into a new and unknown chapter. As the evening wound to a close, we found solace together on the couch, wrapped in a silence that held a deep understanding between us. I glanced at him, and I saw it, a quiet joy in his eyes, a mixture of wonder and confusion. He wasn't sure what had happened, but there was still a glimmer of something more, a softness in his expression that hadn't left. I leaned down and kissed his forehead, a gesture filled with all the unspoken words I couldn't say. It was my way of telling him that everything had changed, but it wasn't something to fear. The days that followed were filled with the usual routine, but something had shifted between us. An invisible thread of understanding wove itself into every glance, every touch. There was no going back now. We had crossed a line, one that could never be uncrossed, and though it would bring its share of challenges, it also promised something deeper, something real. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to love without hesitation, without fear of judgment. I understood now that love is not bound by rules, that it defies expectations and transcends what the world deems acceptable. What Robert and I had was rare, a bond forged in the most unexpected of circumstances. And though it might be a path fraught with difficulties, it was a path I was willing to walk, knowing that this love, this connection, would be the defining journey of our lives. In the days ahead, I found comfort in the quiet moments, in the secret language we had developed. Each shared glance, each innocent touch, reminded me that we had chosen this path together, and whatever challenges it may bring, it was our journey. One filled with discovery, with emotions too strong to deny, and a bond that would forever remain etched in our hearts.